Good morning, Year 4. It's Mrs. Martin here, ready to take you through our reading lesson for today. So today we are going to be looking at a fiction text about being a Viking. The previous 2 days we have looked at non-fiction. So what do you think I mean when I say we're looking at fiction today? That's right, we are looking at a story to do with the Vikings. So today you will find the link to the extract on the daily timetable. So click onto the link from there for me, please, and have a read up to page 21. Feel free to read further if you want to, because it's an interesting story, but the questions will only cover up to page 21. Pause the video here and have a read of the text. Okay, let's look at a couple of pieces of vocabulary that will have come up as you read that. The first word is dubious, or dubiously. If you're dubious about something, it means you doubt it, you're hesitant, you think it's probably not going to happen. So you might say that you were dubious it would snow, if you really thought, it's probably not going to. And the second word is sleigh. Now you've probably heard of a sleigh in terms of Santa and his sleigh. So a sleigh is a larger seated sledge, and it's normally drawn by a horse or reindeer, and they use it to travel through the snow or sometimes across very thick ice, which is what happens in our story. You can see a picture of it here. So let's have a look at the text together to start with. The Hunting with Bows and Arrows on Skis Expedition, Chapter 1. Winters were always cold in the Viking lands, but this winter was the coldest in 100 years. It was so cold that the sullen sea had frozen over, and all the islands in the inner isles were now joined together by a great flat desert of solid ice, 2 meters thick in places. So 2 meters thick is taller than any of the adults that work at our school. On this particularly cold morning, several hours before breakfast, it was as if the whole world was holding its breath, frozen in time. The air was as sharp as broken glass. No sound disturbed. No sound disturbed the pure snowy silence. No sound, that is, apart from an appalling, mad screaming coming from somewhere out in the middle of the ice. For a small party of young boys and their teacher from the hooligan tribe had set out from the little Isle of Burke, where they lived, to the island of Villainy, to the south. Not in a boat, of course, for you cannot sail across a frozen sea. So what do you think they might have travelled on, if you think about the vocabulary that we have looked at? They were speeding far too fast across the ice in an enormous wooden Viking sleigh, pulled by 6 pure white saber-toothed driver dragons, larger than lions and faster than cheetahs. So this is where I can tell it definitely is a fiction text, because we've got a mythical creature in here. The dreadful mad yelling was coming from the man driving the sleigh, Gobber the Belch. Gobber was the teacher in charge of the pirate training program on Burke, and he was an enormous monster of a man, wrapped up in furs, who could easily have been mistaken for a grizzly bear, with a dirty red beard and an attitude problem. "Get on with it, you miserable white worms!" roared Gobber at the saber-toothed dragons, cracking his whip above their heads. "I've had snails that have moved quicker than you lot. My granny could skip faster than this, and she's 104. Yee-haw!" One gigantic furry arm lashed out with a whip that curled through the air like a great black serpent. The others shook the reins in a lunatic frenzy that sent the driver dragons bounding forward in terrible, uncontrolled leaps. So this sounds like quite a dangerous journey to me, and I can tell that because the author has used the words lunatic frenzy and uncontrolled. So it doesn't sound like the journey is almost going very safely at all. Behind Gobber on the sleigh sat 12 of his pupils. 10 of these boys were ugly young thugs, yelling as loudly in excitement as their teacher. Yeehaw! They whooped as the sleigh hit a snowbank and sailed 10 meters through the air, and then slammed back down on the ice with stomach-churning violence. Yeehaw! The last two boys were smaller than the rest and a lot less excited. I'm glad, gasped Hiccup Horrendous Haddock III, as the sleigh tipped over wildly on one runner with an awful screech and spray of ice. I'm glad I didn't have breakfast, because I think it would have come up again. Hiccup is, in fact, the hero of this story, although you would never have guessed it to look at him. He was small and red-haired, and very, very ordinary. Hiccup's best friend, Fishlegs, a skinny runner-bean of a boy with asthma and a squint, wasn't really listening. He was praying to Four with his eyes squeezed tight shut. Can you remember who Four is? Hopefully you remember from the reading work that we did on Wednesday. Please, Four, begged Fishlegs. Please make it stop. Fishlegs' prayer was about to be answered. The sleigh was approaching the great black cliffs of the Visitor Hugs territories, far too impossibly fast for it to stop in time. Don't open your eyes, Fishlegs, advised Hiccup. Gobber the Belch reared up and with an almighty roar of "Whoa!" leant back so far, pulling on the reins, that he was nearly horizontal. The saber-tooths came to a plunging halt, so sharply that the sleigh wheeled round in a mad arc. They were going to slam into that cliff at a sudden speed. At such a speed, they would all be smashed to splinters. Ah! Yelled Hiccup, shutting his eyes too. So it really does sound like this sleigh is out of control as it's spinning round in a circle, approaching the cliff. The sleigh screeched to a quivering halt. Hiccup opened his eyes again. Astonishingly, they were still alive. But the smooth black wall of the cliff was only centimeters away from Hiccup's cheek. Hiccup held on to the rock for a second to help himself stop shaking. Right! Bellowed Gobber, clambering out of the sleigh entirely unconcerned. What are you all doing sulking in there? Get out and stand to attention, you pathetic dribbles of earwig droppings! Yawning and chattering, all 12 boys unpacked skis from the back of the sleigh and attached them to the bottom of their furry boots. For 6 months of the year, the Vikings lived under snow, so a Viking warrior had to be just as good at skiing as he was at sailing. This was a hunting with bows and arrows on skis expedition. The boys had to ski down Mount Villainy, the largest mountain in the Inner Isles, shooting with their arrows as many semi-spotted snowpeppers as they could. I'm going to get at least 50, boasted Snot-Faced Snotlout, a tall thug of a boy with huge nostrils and a moustache like a furry caterpillar squirming on his upper lip. You can see he's wearing the skis here, ready to go through the snow. Silence! Screamed Gobber, cracking his whip. There was absolute silence immediately. It's a curious fact that a heavily armed, mad 6.5-foot teacher holding a whip tends to get his class's attention. I will be staying here to guide the sleigh, yelled Gobber. Hiccup Horrendous Haddock III will be in charge of the hunting party when you get to the mountain. 10 of the boys groaned and turned round to look furiously at Hiccup. All of them reckoned they would make better leaders than Hiccup. Snoutlout had won the Senseless Violence Cup 3 years in a row. Wartyhog could smash chairs to pieces with his bare fists. Dog's Breath, the Durbrain, burped so loud he shattered glass. Small, skinny, and unimportant, only Hiccup looked like he had no leadership skills whatsoever. He stood on one leg apologetically, and this made his skis cross, and he fell over. Why does Hiccup get to be in charge again? Demanded Snotface Snotlout through gritted teeth. If he's got gritted teeth, that implies he really doesn't like what's happening. Because Hiccup is the son of the chief, and one day he will be in charge permanently. Thor help us all. Ah, so they're playing on the fact that Thor is a god here, aren't they? Exclaimed Gobber, helping Hiccup to his feet and dusting the snow off him with one hairy hand. Any questions? Boomed Gobber. Fishlegs put up his hand. Just a small point, sir, he said. How are we going to climb up the mountain in the first place? The saber-toothed dragons will drag you to the top on your skis, replied Gobber. It shouldn't take more than half an hour. Oh, that doesn't sound very fun, does it? Being dragged to the top of a cliff by a dragon. Fishlegs and Hiccup looked dubiously at the great white creatures crouching dangerously on the ice, tongues spilling out over teeth as sharp as swords, cat-like eyes gazing at their small human masters with the purest hatred. Here we've got a rare picture of a Viking ski. Okay, so this is the end of the extract that you need to read up to, but there are a few more pages if you would like to read as well. Let's have a look back at our PowerPoint then and see those questions that we are going to answer. So we are going to start with our retrieval questions as always. So remember, you're skimming and scanning the text for those key words. So if I look at question 4, which says, who is going to be the hero of the story? What do you think my key word is there that I'm going to skim and scan for? That's right, my word is hero. So I'm going to be looking through the text for that word hero. So have a go at your retrieval questions. And then there are a variety of different types of questions as well, which will require fuller answers. So think about why it was important for them to learn to travel. You might need to use some of our knowledge from our lesson on Monday to help you with that answer. Hiccup is the hero of the story. So we're going to make a prediction here about what he might do to be the hero. I predict that. Try and use that sentence opener within your answer. And then our last one, I want you to think about how different Viking schools sound to schools today. Do you think that nowadays we would go on a trip like this? Or as exciting as that might be, it might be a little bit too dangerous for us. But perhaps the Vikings needed to go on trips like this. Why do you think that might be? So you'll find all of these questions on the PowerPoint on our class page. Please remember to send in your answers to us so we can have a look at your fantastic work.